Let's get started. Hello. My name is Mai Ryuno. I'm the artist and educator at Playful Grand here in Monterey, California, and I am live streaming on Sundays to teach you and also do some exercise with you about something about drawings. This is my third time doing this, and the first time we talked about outlines and essential shapes, basic shapes to start for you to start drawing. And last week we talked about positive negative, which supports you to see those shapes in a simple way and be able to get them on your paper or other surface from the reference to close to as close to as the reference that you might try to recreate the image of as you're drawing. And today we're going to talk about light and shadow. So after drawing of lines and capturing essential shapes of whatever you wanted to draw, definitely something to make it look more realistic, 3D is it requires adding more in between lines and making the shapes look more like bodies, substantial things that you're trying to create as visual illusion on the surface. Often cases, maybe for drawing it's paper, but it can be canvas or some other things that you might eventually be using the drawing for on. So that being said, let's get started. Please let me know if you have any questions throughout the session, and if you're watching this as recording, leave a message in the comments with any questions or anything that you want me to answer. Technical issues. Okay, here we go. Today's topic is light and shadow. My presentation moved before I started. I moved it around, sorry. So this is October 3rd. Today's topic is light and shadow drawing, and that's what we're gonna talk about. And you're gonna have a chance to do some exercise later after I explain some things. So grab some paper and pencil. I'm gonna talk about that as well too. I want to start with this quote from a book I read almost over 10 years ago. It's let me just read that. The quality that we call beauty, however, must always grow from the realities of life. And our ancestors, forced to live in dark rooms, presently discover beauty in shadows, ultimately to guide shadows towards the beauty's end. And this quote is from a book called In Praise of Shadows, written by Junichiro Tanizaki. It's easier for me to say Tanizaki Junichi. It's a Japanese author. Book was first published in 1930s. It's almost 80-year-old book that I never read. This book in Japanese, although I can, was introduced to me by an American professor here in the United States. So I only read it in English. And when I started thinking about teaching this session, I thought about the book and I started rereading it. And as this book, 80 some years old, and written in Japanese and by a Japanese author, it talks about the difference between East and West. Also, the time 80 years ago was Japan was becoming modernized and getting a lot of influence from the Western culture, and his struggle between the tradition and the new, old and new, in relation to how we see beauty in light and shadow, and that how we treat them, how we include them or exclude them in relation to our lifestyle that influences us, our way of seeing the world and experience the world. So this, all these drawing sessions I'm doing here on YouTube, half of it is more technical, how to draw, but also half of it is how we see things to help you draw more effectively for the realistic drawings that can be eventually used also for non-realistic, abstract, imaginative, other types of drawing. Yeah, how to see is, I always say to my students, half or even more important part of drawing. And why it's important is something that you might search for how to draw this, how to draw that, and you learn from those sources. But then when you start thinking like, oh, I wanted to draw something else, then you have to look for how to draw this, how to draw that. Again, every time you change the subject matter, image that you wanted to recreate as drawing or any other visual art form. But if you understand how to see, that's good, that's useful for how to draw, you might be able to apply that to any drawings, any images that you're trying to draw. So this is a place where I'm trying to teach you not only how to draw this and that, but also how to see things in the real world, in a realistic references as photographs, so that you can learn the basics, fundamental of drawing, and apply that to any drawings that you might want to do on your own, which influenced by also our everyday life experience, which place you live, which culture, which time period, all that. So anyway, so that's cool to start to think and see the light and shadow around us, to use the essence for your drawing. So that being said, I say this: learning how to see is the key to successful drawing. So again, I'm teaching both how to see and how to draw, and combine that, I hope you'll be able to draw what you wanted to draw in a way that you wanted to draw without a lot of struggles. Eventually, it takes time, of course. So I want to start with these two pictures. That left one is in color and right one is in black and white. And today we're gonna be, you might notice my presentation is all black and white with different grays. So we're gonna be dealing more with black and white and no color. But I wanted you to see this first to compare images in color, image in color, and an image in black and white. Do you notice anything? In relation to first maybe outlines, which I got a question about outline. Very simple question. What is outline? And the question made me think, what is it? And a little more deeply, outline is the border between things. So, for example, in this particular image, there are a lot of borders between different structures. Different buildings have borders, and between buildings and tree has borders, and the tree and the car have borders, and within that, buildings have garage door have borders between the wall and the garage door. Windows have borders, and car has different parts that also have borders, like windows again, tires, wheels, and doors, and all the other parts, lights and things. But between these two images, the left one was taken with my old Polaroid camera. So it's not as crisp as some photo that you can take with this new device or the nice camera. So it's somewhat blurry, but it has colors. And that right one, let's just turn it into black and white. The color one, you might see more borders between those different objects. And if you turn your eyes towards black and white, a lot of borders, they exist in images as different parts of the object, cars or buildings or anything, that might they disappear into some dark shadows, and borders are more evident when the contrast between light and shadow exists. Then there is shadow of the tree cast on the ground, that those branches create borders between the ground and the shadow. So first thing you might think, and we did in the last couple weeks in terms of outline, was about objects, shapes of the objects we were trying to draw. Yeah, within that or outside of those objects, there are light and shadows. The contrast between that also gives us borders between the dark shadows, light shadows, medium gray shadows, everything else, and plus reflection and etc. So all the lines, all the borders you can see within the reference, it's outlines, not just for the object, obvious things, but those light and shadow difference between them within the object, within anything, it also gives us the borders that equals outlines. I went out on the Fisherman's Wharf here in Monterey on Friday and specifically tried to look for some interesting shadows and structure shapes and took some photos there at Fisherman's Wharf. This one, if you look at it, there are a lot of intricate geometric shapes, straight lines with some curves, but a lot of straight lines. Combination of them creates different parts of this building and sign and equipment, and those combination of them with the light hitting from the east side creates some shadows by the objects blocking the light onto the bottom of something, wall of something, ground, etc. The next picture at the same place, focusing on some shadows cast on the ground with this device, something, the lifting thing, that creates another layer of image that's not just the objects, but the second shape of the object cast on that ground. And towards the left, there is a big dark shadow that there is equipment there, kind of heavy vehicle. yeah, some parts disappeared into dark shadows so that shadows blurs the border outline into one big chunk of shape that you might see towards the left side of the picture. Here's another picture from the same place. Texture of wood wall is another interesting element in this building that shows no, a little bit subtle, maybe you could call light and shadow. Also, the fade of the wood. This is pre-old building that gives us different shades from very light gray, light colors or light shade to dark shade within the pieces of wood with the grain of grain. Is that called grain? The marks of patterns on the wood also gives us different gray, different shades, different shadows, as well as again the parts of the building depending on how they're placed coming out in creates different shadows that cast another shapes onto the wall as the second, third layers of image. That's abstract yet interesting visual that I thought. So I'm gonna talk about what I show these pictures, but when it comes to drawing with shade, light and shadow, it's important to have that light and shadow in your reference and also turn it into black and white so that you have a specific reference that you can use without colors disturbing your ways of seeing the reference. And black and white, as with that color, it might capture more essence than what the color photographs can offer us as images. So this is a little longer intro today to talk about how you might see things or I see things within the reference in the images that it can be turned into drawing. And as we have a really convenient device like this, not only learning about drawing, but also in relation to that, start seeing your world, your everyday life around you, and try to capture the moments with the drawing in mind so that you can have good start references the starting point of drawing so that you have good materials to start with. So let's start the actual drawing that we're gonna do today. After that, please let me know if you have any questions, anything that you are curious about in photos, reference, shadows, light, the quote that I introduced, anything. I'm happy to answer live here. And if you're watching recording, please feel free to leave a comment and questions and the below too. So today, what you will need isn't so different from the other days, but couple pieces of paper, definitely white paper, no lines. It's just if you only have paper with lines, it's okay. But if you have just white paper, will be great. Just couple pieces. If you're taking my class, my drawing class, you can bring a large sheet so that just to get you used to using big sheet of paper. We're using an 18-inch by 24-inch drawing pad. So if you're watching, not taking my class but watching from outside, that frees you physically, which also mentally free your way of working to not to be so limited in a tiny piece of paper, but just so I recommend you to get some big sheet of paper for your freedom of expression and way of drawing, not to be always in that comfortable size, but a little bigger and even bigger. So paper. And today I put this as graphite pencil for you. Although you don't need it, official graphite pencil. Today, if you are doing this live, just happen to be here and don't have any special pencil, just grab a pencil is fine. But I'm going to talk about different pencils during this session today because it's very important for you to create nice shadows within your drawing. And of course, eraser will be nice, right? To make some changes. I hate to use a word mistake, but it always there is some place that you can improve, you can adjust to make it right. So eraser and photo reference, that's more for when you work on your own. Just something I talked about was 3-4 photos that look for photograph for your reference that's good image for this type of drawing, which involves light and shadow. So look for good light and shadow within your reference, and when you practice or even just make your drawing of your own, find a good reference. I recommend you to use your own photographs. So if you are not used to taking photographs, start taking your photos so that you can create your unique original piece of drawing artwork based on how you see things, what you see in your everyday, rather than pulling images out of online, the internet world, that someone else's view. So black and white, and if you take photos in color, turn it into black and white for this particular light and shadow drawings. So just for this, have a couple pieces of paper, white paper, and some type of pencil. An eraser is fine, but when you want to take this seriously, work on your own, do it again, and more like try to make nice drawing, get some things that are more proper, say, because tools are important when it comes to more traditional type art making. Although that's not what I practice, but I know that I practice traditional one too. So anyway, so those are the materials that I would like you to have. Photo I have, so you don't have to have it. But if you get the inspiration, then I wanted to draw this during this session, grab the photo and use it. Just follow the instruction that I give you in this video. So light and shadow drawing, and what we're gonna do in terms of exercise is I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to draw outline. This is a reflection. It's just doing it the same thing as we did in the last session. And if you haven't seen the last session, I go deeper and we did more exercises about positive, negative drawing. So please, after this, this session, whenever you have time, you want to learn more about it, go back and watch it. And you can do it again. More you do it, the better you become. So check out that. But we're going to do a quick same exercise from the last week based on positive and negative drawing. And I will also give you, after we do that, give you a couple of minutes to add details inside between the lines you're gonna make. You will see it. And things to look at always, this is the same as last week, but essential shapes, big shapes, and outlines. And outlines are the borders between. And once you see the image, you will know what the borders between for this particular exercise. Before we get to that, I said I'm going to give you a little idea of graphite pencils. So this is graphite pencils, and I'm not sure if you have different kinds like these, different numbers of beads and different numbers of H's. They have, of course, different functions. That's why they're there. And if you have them but you're wondering, these are the differences between those pencils. So somewhere in the middle, like HB, that's the middle gray. And towards bigger number of beads, it gets darker and softer. And towards bigger number of edges, gets lighter and harder. What's good for each or different pencils is, for example, if you wanted to put dark shadows, you wanted to use more, bigger number of beads to get darker shadows. Maybe if you wanted to put lighter shadow, you pick up the H side. Also, lines are different. The beads, softer pencils tend to get a little thicker lines. And since it's soft, it smudges more than the harder H pencils. The H pencils might be good because it's light, just to sketch out some rough shapes. So that being said, we're gonna do first positive negative drawing to start today's exercise. If you have any different types of pencils, I recommend you to grab maybe some H pencil to start to very lightly sketch out the shapes that you're gonna make adjustment and you're gonna refine as you work on it, since drawing is a process and building up is what you're gonna do. If you start with darker lines, it's hard to erase, it's hard to add some light shadows. So those are the different pencils and different differences between them and how you might be able to use them for your light and shadow drawing as well as outline drawings. So if you don't have any of different kinds of pencils, to start, I recommend you still to don't put too much pressure. Light, just quick, so that you can make adjustment more easily than trying to erase really hard your lines. Also, different brands, different things, different types, slightly or big difference. That some nicer pencils and some student grade inexpensive pencils. So try with your pencils. This image was actually, I took a photo of my student exercise making their own grayscale. So once you have them, I will recommend you to create your own guide like this with your own pencil for you to learn your tools so that you know all the specifics of what you have as your pencils. They're all different. And your handle of pencils different from others too. So we're gonna start the drawing for you to draw. And if you were here last week, you remember this, maybe. These are pumpkins, another my photograph from Pumpkin Patch. But in 2 minutes, I want you to draw the outline of these pumpkins from positive to negative, which I show you now, and start the 2 minutes. And we're gonna develop the drawing from there into light and shadow. So this is positive and negative, and just quickly say it. Positive is where white area is. Those are the pumpkins. And the black is negative. That's background. That's where dry leaves and things were. But just look at this simple image and try to draw the border outline of the pumpkins, or I can also say outline of the negative space, the background, in 2 minutes. So 2 minutes starts now. Those little bumps, you can ignore them. Just capture the big two shapes, round shapes, with a little, how you say, little stems, but I don't want to call them stems. Little skinny sticks or something coming out of those rounds. What you want to make sure here is the balance between everything, proportion of the shapes, and the placement of those little sticks coming out are in the right place. Obviously, left side, the round is bigger than the right side, but how the right side bump attached to the left side, a little bit higher, right, than towards the top. The bottom has more space. So that looking at negative space can help you to capture this shape as close to as the correct shape that's in that reference. 30 seconds left. Okay, that's 2 minutes. And is your drawing looking okay? Now it's pretty simple, but simple shape is not easy to achieve perfectly. So then next step is for you to add anything you see inside of this positive shape, which is I give you more visual information. So in 2 minutes, what I want you to do is to add any details that you see within. Draw that as lines, but keep them light, nice and light, so you can make adjustment. You can do actually shading more effectively, learning the shading. So 2 minutes, add some more lines inside to make the simple flat shape look more like pumpkins. Pay close attention to how lines curve, the relationship between where the stems start coming out. The way lines curve show you how the pumpkins actually, the shapes of the pumpkin. So that creates another layer of three-dimensional image. without shading. Just lines can give you some three-dimensional illusion as well. So 30 seconds left for this. It's okay if you cannot finish because drawing aids the process and you have more time to do other things, and finishing it is really finishing it takes longer than within this time we spend here now. So just wanted to give you a chance to start and learn and finish on your own time. So hope you got some lines and details in your drawing. Let's see. Hi! I feel like today I've been talking with slides a lot, but how you doing? Please let me know if you have any questions about any parts of this session, if you're watching live or watching as a recording. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have in the comment below. And we just did a couple of things to start the light and shadow drawing. Just creating the foundation for you to work with is reflecting on the last week's session of positive and negative drawing, capturing the essential shape of the pumpkins. Then you add a little more detail as still outlines, lines that you see within to give more definition for those two pumpkins. And the next step is we're going to actually look into light and shadow. So if you want to learn more about outlines, please check out the last couple of sessions, but we're doing light and shadow today. On top of that, so light and shadow, what we're gonna do from here, we were using same subject of those two pumpkins carried from the last week into this week. Why? It's because it's the season, and maybe you can learn how to draw pumpkins here, and you can turn it into maybe, some nice card for Thanksgiving or some seasonal drawing that you can frame and give it to someone special as holiday gift, maybe. So, but you can apply all the basics to any image that you wanted to create as a drawing. So let's get to the light and shadow, which is what we're going to do is, I mentioned that earlier, not only the outline is for the shapes of the particular objects, things, scenes, like cars, trees, buildings, anything, but also the border between the light and shadow. Lighter shadow next to darker shadow. Really highlight next to dark shadows. Any shadows that you can see in my photos, that the photo of the car was a tree on the ground, some shadows on the wall, and one of a couple of other or three others photos, and anything that has also borders. The light and shadow have also borders as outlines. So I'm gonna give you a different reference, process differently, so that you can see light and shadow more easily than the original photo. And I want you to identify the borders between different shadows within that reference. And I will say there were about 4 different shades within that reference. So if you can sketch out with light lines of those borders between the shadows, that's what we want to do in the first 2 minutes in the next part. Then after that, in a couple of minutes, this is where our learning of pencils come in. If you don't have different pencils, just try to create different shades of gray within between those lines based on how you see what you see in your reference. And what I want you to look at is outline of shades, no outline of the object, but shades. And also that relates to the shapes of shadows. And also in the second part of it, I want you to be able to identify different shades of gray and where those grays go within your outline drawings. So the first reference is this. I hope you can see different shadows more easily than looking at the other photo. Let me just quickly show you. So this photo, it's very that day wasn't so sunny, so the light wasn't so strong. That's why in this photo shadows are very similar throughout, a little bit difference in the back, but so I turned that into a little more graphic contrast image of the same image for you to show. If we bring the contrast up, this is how you can see the different light and shadows. So in 2 minutes, try to outline again little tiny curves. You can just ignore that, but roughly identify where light goes, highlight where it's white, and where the second gray, light gray goes, and where the third gray goes, and where the really dark gray goes. There were actually, including white, I think there were at least 5. Anyway, so 2 minutes, just outline the different shadows and light in your drawing you just did. Roughly 2 minutes. Ignore the tiny little parts, but look at big shape. For example, this will be like this in your drawing. Just draw like that, and a little bit of rectangle. No need to be perfect. It's just the guide you're creating for, but a little curve like this is important. So definitely, instead of going straight, there is a little puzzle piece. It's important to follow these lines as it goes down. That's important than tiny zigzags. And how this one still carries a little second, third gray, mid gray, darker mid gray. But then the even darker gray takes over up high, but it goes down, and same thing. Don't worry about tiny little curves, but big ones, big lines, roughly. What does this look like? Roughly, and curves are important. So that's 2 minutes. I hope you can get rough shape of the shadows as lines. So those lines become your guide for the next step. You're gonna fill those between lines with certain grays, certain shades of grays that you have either as different types of pencils, or if you have one, probably you can change the pressure to make some areas lighter, somewhere darker, although you might not be able to exact same grade that you see in this photo, but this one is created super high contrast anyway, so it's okay. You just try it and see what happens, and try it again on your own time, more comfortable. No, you can give yourself more time than 2 minutes and do it. But so next 2 minutes, I want you to start filling the in-between space between lines with, for example, if you can see here, it's lighter gray. So put a little lighter gray within these lines. Then move on to the next place as a little darker than this, or a lot, but no, darker gray than next. Then go to even darker gray, so at least have 3 different shades of gray with a little light. This you can erase to give some light, but try to create different grays. Might not be able to finish all, but maybe try a little bit of here and there in 2 minutes to see how that works. Let's see. So use this reference as a guide and also your outline drawing as a guide, and just fill the areas with grays. 2 minutes. Again, the photograph is much more subtle in terms of shading, but we're turning that into this high contrast, more kind of illustrative, simpler image for you to learn how to look at things when you start drawing before you start blending, getting more details, smooth texture, anything. First, be able to identify shapes and light and shadow as simple as possible to start and capture it roughly rather than starting with high detailed, high definition photos that we're so used to seeing. But it's harder to achieve with a lot of details, a lot of tiny details if you try to do it at the beginning of the drawing. So that needs to happen later. But start with the simple way of seeing as well as simple way of drawing, and understand the concept of light and shadow rather than trying to create perfect image. That's the goal though. That's a big goal, of course. So if you're at the level like I can do all this, you don't need to watch this. But always good to be back. Oops, 2 minutes. It's always good to be back to the basics as well. So that's 2 minutes. It might be a little too short for shading. Shading takes really long time to achieve the good shading, but also depending on how big, small you might be working on your side. But this is the concept of light and shadow in that beginning of the process of drawing to eventually get to something more even realistic with the details, which so again, please let me know if you have any questions, or also in the future session, if you want me to look at your reference and cover how you see and how you draw, what specific image that you want me to put it up and talk about it, please send me an email at hello@playfulgrand.com, which is in that description below, and I am happy to use your specific image as reference to talk about. To talk about drawing with any specific questions that you might have. So again, if you have any specific reference or specific subject matter that you want me to cover during the Sunday drawing session, please let me know by leaving a comment here and or email me at hello@playfulgrand.com, and you can with the email you can send me an image that you want me to use. And right now outline positive, negative, and light and shadow. But anything else you might want to learn, just shoot me an email or leave me a comment. I'm happy to really work with what you wanted to learn about. So this is the exercise we have for today, and this is the original photo of the black and white. So definitely you want to just start looking at your drawing again with this photo and how you can start make the shading smooth, changing some things, but also bringing some of the texture outlines and things that we're going to eventually cover more detailed stuff in the future. So also, if you want me to look at your specific drawing, that's something that I do in my classes, but it's not possible during this session, but I'm available for us to work together and really look at your drawing and give you any feedback. So that's also check out my website at www.playfulgrand.com. If you click creativity based learning or learning section, you will see that the class service that I offer through Playful Grand. So today's learning was summary of today's learning. So what things that I would like you to remember from this section is the same thing. We're still keeping our views simple. So simplify your views towards light and shadow, not to look at too much details yet when you start working on any new areas that you're working on. So light and shadow, keep it simple, 3 or 4 different shadows, and outline them and fill with different grades that can be achieved with different pencils. So those tools that I introduced today is pencils. I'm gonna also put the link in the description below, so check those out too. And start with the essential shapes. We're dealing with more shapes of objects in that last couple of weeks, but today I introduce you the essential shapes of the shadows. So start looking for shapes of shadows within your reference if you're working at this. In our class we're working on this too. So when you look at your reference, after the shape of the object, start looking for detail as shapes of shadows, non-obvious shapes. and look for different shades. That's what we did towards the end of exercise, that looking as you draw the outline of different shadows, also look at different shades of shadows that are you going to eventually put into your drawing as filling between the lines. And know your tools. This today's case, pencils, they come in different numbers and letters, and they have meanings. And the quick summary of it: two beads are darker and softer, and the H's are lighter and harder. So use them accordingly. That's the last one. To what you need to achieve in your drawing. So I think that's it for today, and thank you for being with me for that third session of Sunday drawing. And I hope to see you here again. Happy drawing, and have a nice new week starting tomorrow, and a happy fall season. Bye bye.